Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're going to be carrying on with a review of the Asian Animal Pack that gives us 7 wonderful new animals that has come to the game from Asia, all across Asia. And we've covered the first half of the pack. We covered the Petit David's deer, the Blackbuck, the Malabar Rose, which is actually a free animal that comes as a free update, a new butterfly, and the honey badger. We've done that for part 1. Part 2 will be covering the rest of the pack, so I'm quite sort of excited to talk about some of these animals here, and obviously I'll give my little thoughts on them and whether they're cool additions or not. Honestly, they're all cool additions, so don't need to really ask there. But I'm really excited to get stuck into it. So we're going to be starting off today. We've got the lion-tailed macaque, so let's have a look at these guys over yonder. So here is the lion-tailed macaque. So the lion-tailed macaque, or Macaque senalis, also known as the Wanderoo. These guys are an old world monkey that are only found in the Western Ghats in South India. So quite a rare monkey. So you can kind of see, I've covered them actually quite recently. Monsoon made a mod of them, so I've covered them quite recently, but still a really, really awesome mod. You know, Frontier always knocking it out of the park with these guys, which is quite awesome. Here we got the lion-tailed macaque. So the lion-tailed macaque is covered, you can see, in a black fur, and has a striking grey or silver mane that surrounds its face in both sexes. You'd think it'd called the lion mane macaque, but they decided to go with the lion tail. So the face itself, you can see there, is hairless and black in adults, but pinkish in infants that are less than a year old. Infants are born with no mane, which begins growth at about 2 months, so really young ones don't have this mane. And they are named for not their mane, but their tail, which is a long, thin, and naked tail with a line tuft at the end, black tift. And the size of the tail is about 25 centimeters or about 9.8 inches, and their eyelids, or their eyes, usually are kind of like a shade of hazelnut with highlighted black eyelids, so they look really striking faces there. Lion-tailed macaques, like other macaques, have deep-cheeked pouches used for storing food and are quadrupedal with opposable digits. You can see they've got the thumb there. Their mane that surrounds the face gives their monkey the German name Bartauf, which means beard ape. And they are among the smaller macaques. They get to about 42 to 61 centimeters, or about 17 to 24 inches in length, in head to body length, and weigh about 2 to 10 kilograms, or about 4.4 to 22 pounds. And then, as I mentioned, among the smaller cats, you can see the young ones there. We'll get into them shortly. So lion-tailed macaques, these guys dwell in rainforests, often found in the upper canopy of moist tropical evergreen forest or monsoonal forests. And it is diurnal, meaning they are active exclusively in daylight hours. And when active, they will spend about half the day foraging, and the other half will be spent resting or finding new areas to forage, or just wandering. The species tends to avoid humans more than other macaques. However, they do get used to humans when habitats, are destroyed, and they have to come back to human habitations to find food. They kind of cause conflict. So, in terms of group behavior, these guys are much like other macaques, living in hierarchical groups of up to about 10 to 20 members. Usually consists of a few males, or 1 to 3 males, and many females. They are polygamous, and they have no specific breeding season, but they do tend to breed in the wet season when resources are most abundant, and little time is spent grooming and playing with the others in the group. In terms of their kind of territoriality, they are territorial animals, defending the area first with loud cries, and then bared teeth towards invading troops. And these efforts may prove fruitless, then they will brawl actually quite aggressively, and that can result in severe injuries due to lacerations from their large canines. The other forms of communication, they kind of mount to show strength, branch scratching to scratch off things, and lip smacking as a friendly gesture, or yawning and grimace to show dominance. In terms of other behaviour, though, they are typically, arboreal, so their behaviour is characterised by arboreal living. Their patterns involve selectively feeding from a large variety of fruit trees, large individual spaces while foraging, and time budgets with high proportion of time devoted for exploration and feeding. So they are omnivores, and they primarily eat indigenous fruits, seeds, flowers, insects, snails, and small vertebrates in virgin forest. And lion-tailed macaques are actually quite important, like a lot of other species, for seed dispersal. We'll have a look at a male when we get a chance. So let's see his spot here. There's the male there. So they are quite important for seed dispersal and are able to transport seeds long distances by either dropping them or defecating them. However, due to the changes in environment, adaptation to rapid environmental changes occurred because of massive selective logging and through behavioral modifications, and they broadened their food choices, so they kind of opened up their palate a bit. These changes involve a large increase in ground foraging and feeding in far more non-native plants and insects. And these feeding changes include fruits, seeds, shoots, plants, flowers, cones, mesocarps, and other parts of many non-indigenous and pioneer plants. And they've actually been observed in some places eating the nests and eggs of nestlings and eggs of pigeons. So in terms of gestation, we'll have a look at the cute little baby here. So you can see right before they develop their big mane. So gestation lasts approximately 6 months, and the young is nurtured for 1 year. Seasonal maturity is reached about 4 years of age and 6 years for males, and the life expectancy is approximately 20 years in the wild, and sometimes even living up to 30 in captivity, so quite long-lived in that regard. So we'll have a look at another one over here. Why not? We'll have a look at you again. In terms of threats they face in the wild, they are preyed upon by snakes, raptors, and large carnivores. The impact of native predators not compared to their human-induced, threats such as habitat fragmentation due to timber harvesting and exotic plantations for tea and coffee, which destroys their natural habitat. This fragmentation leads to many different problems, including being hit by cars, struggling to find food, and getting electrocuted on power lines. And due to their low numbers and high levels of fragmentation, they are very susceptible to inbreeding as well, which causes genetic issues. And the second largest threat is typically hunting, as humans trap them for meat, and especially in areas where they have primates as their preferred food. And there are many other conflicts because they go out and try to find food and get into issues with humans, which is really sad. But in terms of conservation and population, an assessment of 2003 reports there's about 3 to 3,500 animals are scattered across several areas in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Katana. Lion-tailed macaque ranks among the rarest and most threatened primates in the world, and the range has become increasingly isolated because I mentioned, plantations and habitat fragmentation. During the 1977 to 1980, public concern about these guys, about their endangered status, had focused upon a Save Silent Valley, which was a very fierce environmental debate to help the species. And there's a lot of troops in there, so to protect them as well. There was a self-sustaining population of lion-tailed macaques in the Sirsi Hovada in Karatana, Macaque, which is the northernmost population of the species. And there seems to be about 250 there. But there seem to be other areas where they are doing well. And there's also many zoos taking part in the breeding program, including in July 2021, Rockhampton Zoo euthanized Australia's last lion-tailed macaque. However, they are no longer on that list. And there seems to be, India has been actually quite a good job of trying to protect it, so they're actually helping it come back from extinction, and hopefully, that only continues and they start to become even less and less endangered, which is always a win. So we'll have a look at another one here. Really, really beautiful. I love how Frontier have done the mod, so it looks really, really awesome. So we're going to have a look at the Zoopedia here. So there's the Zoopedia, population wild, about 2,500. We already kind of Wanderoo, things like that. Macara silences. You can see the kind of range there. Pop group sizes about 3 to 20, so up to 10 males, 20 females. Same for the bachelor groups. Female hierarchy and troop 1 dominant male. Polygamous, matrilineal, so mature males are outsiders. They are shy and guests flee from them. About 50 centimeters long, that's about right. 30 years of age, that's alright for captivity. Any of males are a little bit bigger by the looks of it, so that works out well. Age of sexual maturity is about 6 years. They have babies till they die. That makes sense. Probably a little bit later. As I mentioned, maturity is about 4 years for males. 1 baby per mating event. Gestation incubation about 6 months. Interbirth periods about 18 months. And quite difficult to breed in captivity, so that's an interesting one there. So, the lion-tailed macaque actually has cheek pouches that can store the same amount of food as their stomach, so that's quite cool. They're also known as beard apes due to the white ruff, we mentioned that. They have different alarm calls for different predators, that's also true, a lot of macaques and monkeys have that. Lion-tailed macaques will smack their lips at each other as a friendly greeting, we already mentioned that before. And the lion-tailed macaque has quickly adapted to the rapid habitat loss in their natural habitat. In deforested areas, macaques have been observed to spend much more time foraging on the ground rather than their usual arboreal lifestyle, so that's another thing as well. And who can they live with? They don't live with anyone. Alright. So that's another cool one there. Definitely a big fan of how that's come out. You know, a really, really cool species. Another one that Frontier has absolutely nailed. So we're going to move on to the next species we've got here. A really, really cool one. We have got the Nilgai, also known as the blue ball. So another really cool species here, and one I've wanted for a good long while. So this is the Nilgai, also known as Rossilopus tragocamelus, which name literally means in Latin blue cow, is the largest antelope that is found in Asia and is ubiquitous among the northern Indian subcontinent, and they are the sole member of the genus Rossilopus, which is the first scientifically described by Peter Simon Pallas in 1766. So very, very cool animal. So in terms of the etymology, as mentioned, Nilgai comes from the fusion word of Hindu Nul and Gai, which is blue cow, which is interesting. And in terms of evolution, they seem to be their own tribe, and there's one other one found in Africa, but kind of relatives have been found around Africa and then kind of moved to India and Pakistan, with only one species making it into the Swarovski Hills in India. So they're a group of African origin, but then moved into India. But there are remains of Nilgai from the Pleistocene in southern India as well. But yeah, really, really cool species. So Nilgai are sturdy with a deep neck, a sloping back, and thin legs, as you'll see when the male stands up. And there's a short mane of hair behind and along the back end of its shoulder, behind the shoulder. There's a white patch on its throat and about 2 white spots on its face, ears, cheeks, lips, and chin. The ears are tipped in black at about 15 to 18 centimeters, or about 5 to 7 inches long. And although the dewlap right below the white throat patch has a kind of almost like a pendant look to it, it is about 13 centimeters, or about 5 inches long in males. The tough tail has a few white spots tipped in black, and is up to 54 centimeters, or 21 inches long. And then the forelimbs are generally longer than the high limbs, so you can see it's got a very slope back to it, which looks really, really cool. So that's the males there. While the females or juveniles are often orange or tawny, you can see the male here is very much like a steel grey, bluish grey, with the ventral parts inside of the thighs being white as well. And almost white though, not quite albino individuals have been seen in zoos and things like that. And their hairs are typically about 23 to 28 centimeters long and quite fragile and brittle, you can see there. And males have thicker skin on their head and neck to protect them in fights. And the coat is not well insulated with fat during winter, and consequence, severe cold might actually be fatal for them. So you can see the males are horned, but the females are occasionally horned, but they're mostly hornless. And these horns are about 15 to 24 centimeters, or about 5 to 9 inches long, but generally shorter, about generally shorter than 30 centimeters. Smooth and straight, they may curve forward or backwards, and the horns of the Nilgai kind of lack that kind of ring structure that a lot of other bovids have. So in terms of their size, as I mentioned, they are the largest antelope in India and Asia. So they stand at about 1.1 to 1.5 meters, or about 3.3 feet to 4 feet, 11 feet at the shoulder. And the head to body length is typically 1.7 to 2.1 meters, about 5 foot 7, 6 foot 11. Males weigh between 109 to 288 kilograms, between 240 and 635 pounds, with the maximum weight being recorded as about 308 kilograms, or 679 pounds. But females are typically a bit lighter, weighing between 100 and 213 kilograms, or 220 to 470 pounds. And those sexual dimorphisms you can see is quite prominent, with the males being larger and the females having different colours. So that's a good look at the male. We'll have a look at the females just to get a better comparison. Here's a female Nilgai. Really, really beautiful, actually, animal. They've done a good job there. Okay. So the Nilgai is endemic to the Indian subcontinent, with major populations being found in India, Nepal, and Pakistan. The population in Bangladesh was thought to be extinct, but some individuals from Indian and Nepalese populations can border that country as well. So kind of found all across that area. And they're found in the foothills of the Himalayas. They prefer areas with short bushes and scattered trees and scrub forest and grassy plains, and they're common agricultural land but hardly occur in dense woods. They have been introduced to southern Texas, where they roam the prairies, subforests and oak forests, and are quite generalist. It can adapt to a variety of habitats to they seem to prefer, though they're centrally and less dependent on water. They may desert their territories if all water sources are dried up. And the territories in Texas can be between 0.6 to 8.1 square kilometers, which is interesting as well. The Indian population, they thought to be doing quite well, is estimated to be about 1 million in 2001. And the population is in Texas in the 1920s and 30s is live in a large ranch that's about 2,400 hectares, and then a feral population going to come from that one as well. It's very interesting as well. So in terms of their behavior and ecology, they are diurnal, so they're mainly active during the day, though they tend to be most active during dawn and dusk, dawn in the morning and in the afternoon and evening. Females do not interact apparently with males much, except during the breeding season. Though groups are generally small, with 10 or fewer individuals, though groups of 20 to 70 have been seen known to occur. In 1980, in the Baraja National Park, the average herd size was about 3 individuals, though there were different kind of group types. 1 or 2 females with young calves, 3 to 6 adults and yearling females with calves, or males in groups with 2 to 18 members. So typically tame, they are considered to may appear timid or cautious if alarmed or harassed. Instead of seeking cover like duikers that would flee up to 300 meters or even 700 meters from danger, they kind of gallop away and try and find cover. Though generally quiet, they have been reported to make some grunts when alarmed, and females make clicking sounds when nursing young. Alarmed individuals, mainly juveniles below 5 months, will give out a coughing roar that lasts about half a second, and it can be heard by herds less than 500 meters away. It's interesting. So fights will also take place between both sexes, which include neck pushing against each other and ramming each other using horns. Fights can be gory, despite their protective skin. Deep lacerated wounds and even deaths may occur. Display behaviors focus on the throat, patch, and belly, and threatening opponents by positioning them as well. A young male had been observed making its submissive display by kneeling to an adult male who stood erect, and they typically mark the territories they make with dung. Piles that can be as much as 50 centimeters in radius, and the defecation process is elaborate as they stand with his legs about a meter apart, with the rump lowered and the tail held almost vertical. And they stay in the same position for at least 10 seconds before relieving themselves, and the process not to be as elaborate in females as it is in males. In India, though, they share their habitat with four-horned antelope, chinkaka, chital, and blackbuck. They also associate with gar and water buffalo, but that's less common. They often prefer areas, the Nilgai and the Chiraka prefer areas with acacia and maneta trees, while the sambar deer and the chital prefer forests with indigenous and chihuahua trees. In India, they are preyed upon by Asiatic lions and Bengal tigers, though the latter is not a significant predator of these antelope because there's not many Asiatic lions anymore. Leopards also prey on them, but they prefer smaller prey. Dholes have been known to attack them, and they've also been known to be attacked by striped hyenas and Indian wolves. So in terms of their ecology and their diet, these guys are browsers or mixed feeders, but in Texas they are primarily grazers, because that's all they can find. They tend to prefer grasses and herbs, but also feed on woody plants in the dry tropical forests of India. Diet is generally sufficient in protein and fats, though the protein content for the Nilgai should be at least about 7%. And they can survive long periods without water and do not drink regularly, even during the summer. So then we'll talk about the cute little babies. Let's have a look at this cute little one. That's an albino one, so we won't talk about them. We want to have a look at a normal little baby who's right here. This cute little Nilgai. So observations of females in southern Texas reveal that ovaries are developed by 2 years old, and the first burst takes place typically about a year later. Though there have been cases of young as 1.5 mating and giving birth successfully. Females can breed again after a year after giving birth, and males in the same location are found to have active testes by the age of 3 years, but mature about 4 years of age. Males become sexually active to 4 to 5 years, and mating occurs throughout the year with peaks of 3 to 4 months. The time of year that peaks varies depending on their natural range. We'll talk about that. It's something from October to February, peaking in November to December. which is quite cool. They will fight for dominance, and as they kind of display their enlarged chest, their throat patches and hold them upright. They run each other with their horns, and they have quite vicious fights. And the winner will get the female. The courtship lasts for about 45 minutes, and then they give birth to a calf. So the gestation of the calf is about 8 to 9 months, followed by a single calf, sometimes twins, if you're lucky, even triplets. And birth seems to peak in about June to October in the native range. And these calves are precocial, so they're pretty much able to go right out of the box and stand within 40 minutes of birth and forage on their 4th week. Pregnant females will isolate themselves before giving birth, and as typical with several bovid species, they tend to hide for the first few weeks of their lives. They keep their calves hidden. This period of concealment can last as long as a month in Texas. In calves, mainly males play fight by neck fighting, and young males tend to leave their mothers about 10 months old and join in bachelor groups. And in Texas, their lifespan is typically about 10 years. In terms of their threats and conservation, they are likely considered least concern. While common in India, they are kind of more sparsely common in Pakistan and Nepal. And the major reason is because the decimation of the two countries of rapid hunting and habitat destruction as well. Though there is an exotic population, as I mentioned, in Texas. And while populations also exist in Alabama, Florida, and the Mississippi, in the Mexican state of Talupas, which have escaped from exotic ranches, but they're doing quite well. And they are quite important. There have been remains found of these guys in the Indus Valley civilization, so luckily they hunted them. And they're featured in a lot of paintings and stuff in India. And they actually, sometimes their population can be so large they have been working on culling them as well. So there has been issues with culling and things like that. But yeah, they're doing quite well. They are least concerned species. And a rather beautiful animal, if I do say so myself. I'm definitely a big fan of the Nilgai. So another really cool species that we get to talk about. So let's have a look at the Zoopedia. So yeah, quite common. 100,000. See that big habitat range there. Habitat, group size 3 to 10, so 1 male and 1 females. Same there. Bachelor or mixed groups are going to 1 dominant male. Polygamous group. Matrilineal mature males, alpha. Relationship with humans neutral, and guests will flee from them. About 1.35 at the shoulder for males and 1.15 for females, a little bit smaller. 17 years, that's about right. 200 kilograms for a male and 160 for a female on average. That's pretty good. Age sexual maturity is about 2.5 years. Babies still don't die. Number of offspring 1 to 2. Incubation about 8 months. Interbirth period 6 months. And very easy breed of captivity. That's quite cool. So, the word for Nilgai comes from Hindu, means blue cow, and they are considered sacred in Hindu culture. They scent mark their resting areas with their feet as part of group communication. I mentioned that one as well. They are wary and flighty animals with extremely good eyesight and hearing. They'll often bolt at the first indication of danger. We kind of mentioned that one over there. USA, non-Jewish game animals, and now has established feral population of over 30,000 animals in the semi-desert areas of Texas as well. And then they can be living with wild water buffalo, Indian rhinos, and blackbuck. So yeah, that's the interspecies enrichment. Another really cool species. Definitely a big fan of these guys. So it's a really cool Nilgai. So next up we have got the Japanese raccoon dog, or the tanuki is their other name. Let's have a look at these guys. Look at the camera there. And this is a species that can actually climb. So that's one of their cool, traits that they've got. But look at you since you're not scratched up to high heaven. So we've got here the Japanese raccoon dog, or Nyctocerus vivernaris, or the tanuki. I prefer the tanuki. I think I like that, even a more regional name. These guys are species of canid that are endemic to Japan, and they're one of 2 species of the genus Nyctocerus, along the common raccoon dog. So you could say the mainland raccoon dog. Hopefully, Good Boys mod, because that was a beautiful mod that could be remade into that mainland species, so we could have both species of raccoon dogs. That'd be cool. And this is sometimes considered a subspecies of the raccoon dog, but for the most part, at the moment, it is considered its own species. It's considered distinct enough. So the Japanese raccoon dog have a smaller stomach and shorter fur and less insulation value than mainland raccoon dogs. And there is a white colour type that is rare. and in mainland Japan there is like a albinism gene for them as well, which is quite interesting. In terms of behaviour, they are mainly nocturnal, and they are vocalised by growling or with groans that are pitches resemble those of a domestic cat. Like the cat, its back arches to intimidate other animals and assumes a defensive position similar to that of other canids, showing submission or by lowering its body and showing its belly. Usually social groups are limited to a breeding pair, but the individual raccoon dog may stay within a group of non-paired individuals until finding a mate. They are predominantly monogamous, and the breeding period for the species synchronise between females and males and lasts between February to April. A litter of about 4 to 6 pups, so we'll have a look at these cute little pups. It's very, very cute, cute little kit. We'll have C1 climbing up there. We'll actually go up and have a look at you climbing, because we've already had a look at a little baby. So this is one of the cool traits they have. The litter is born after a gestation of 9 weeks, and the parents look after their pups in a den for about a month, and another month the pup will leave the den. Japanese raccoon dogs live for about 7 to 8 years in the wild, but live for about 13 years in captivity. And you can see here, that's what that's just demonstrating here. They have been observed climbing trees to forage for fruits and berries and use their curved claws to actually climb, which is really cool. Have another look at the cute little baby as we carry on. So, the taxonomy, there is a little bit debate on their taxonomy. So, Japanese raccoon dog is considered its own species due to unique chromosomal, behavioural, and morphological characteristics that are absent in the mainland raccoon dog. So, evidence looking at DNA suggests that they are different. But at the moment, the IUCN and the mammal species of the world was considering them a subspecies of the common raccoon dog. Whether the American American Society of Mammalogists consider it its own species. The karyotype of these guys is different. So yeah, I would say they're basically considered their own species these days. I would trust that, though it's kind of a little bit of a debate. Still really cool though. In terms of its conservation, they are placed as least concern due to the species' wide distribution in Japan and abundant population, even though they have been introduced to northeastern Europe. Though in many European countries they are considered an invasive species and harmful, so kill them. Though in Japan the species is hunted mainly to prevent crop damage, although their fur is desired to use for calligraphy brushes, and it was exported to the US before the outbreak of World War II. And the animal suffers a conservative estimate of up to 370,000 deaths by vehicles each year in Japan. But they are still doing quite well, another common species. In terms of folklore, they are known as the tanuki in Japan, and have a long history in folklore. Although the Japanese raccoon dog is a real animal, it's kind of, they've got like a mythical kind of equivalent to it. And they have a recurring theme in Japan popular culture. If you know Mario, he wears a tanuki suit. That looks like he's wearing a raccoon, but he's actually one as well. There is quite a few references to them in Japan culture, and they're quite cool little guys. They do like a Japanese raccoon dog, very very cute. And it's cool that we get a dog that can climb, because the last pack we got with the Americas pack, we got the bush dog that can swim. Now we got one that can climb, so we've got a lot of cool variety in our animals. So let's have a look at the Japanese raccoon dog. So let's see as well. You can see this is the one, I think this covers the mainland one as well. So I think they're considered to be the same species in the game. So they can be found, in Japan. Though I think this is probably wrong. If they want to count the mainland species, they have to get rid of all that. So that might need an update, but we'll carry on. Species data, grouped about 2 to 8. So 7 males, 7 females. So it can be about roughly even, but 2 to 8 for, there as well. Family packs led by alpha pair, and they are monogamous. They are gregarious. All mature offspring is tolerated by the group. They are confident, and guests flee from them, which is a little bit sad. They are quite cute. They get about 43 centimeters long in males, and females a little bit longer, which makes sense. 11 years for the life expectancy, and about 5 kilograms for both males and females. Even though you'd think the males would typically be bigger, but it's probably because they're using the both the common raccoon dog. Let's see if I can actually find the size of the common raccoon dog. See what they're using there. Yeah, that sounds about right. A male's about 0.57 kilograms, sometimes reading the maximum weight of 10 kilograms, and they seem to be on average larger. So yeah, that's they're using. I think there's been the second time they've had an issue with taxonomy. I think so. They should be using just that one because there's two different species now. Because the species they're using is Vivernaris, and the one that's a common raccoon dog is the Asian raccoon dog is Paracelioides. So I guess that's kind of an issue there. But we'll get into that another time. We won't worry about that. So we'll carry on looking. So 5 kilograms. Age of sexual maturity is about 10 months. They have babies till they die. About 2 to 6 months per mating event. Incubation period about 1 month. And midpip period about 10 months. And easy to breed in captivity. That's quite cool. So the Japanese raccoon dog, it retains to ferret-like night wanderer. Japanese folk will be considered, mischievous, playful animals that can shapeshift. Statues of Japanese raccoon dogs often display out establishment to bring good luck. Most other canid species, they climb trees, use their claws. Unlike most other canid species, they can climb trees. And, the tanuki suits of malaria, things like that. And they don't have any enrichment. So, yeah, that's another example of a little bit messed up taxonomy, things like that. Japanese raccoon dog is a fine name for them. They just need to get rid of all this extra one because that's the mainland raccoon dog, which is a different species from the Japanese one. But, yeah, other than that, that's alright. Just some minor updates, I think, that could use some changes. But anyway, still a beautiful animal. Love having it around. So last but certainly not least, we've got everyone's favourite. I love pachyderms, and I love that we're getting another elephant. I'd love to see in the future the African forest elephant, which is the only missing species of elephant from the game, join the game. But here we've got a subspecies of the Indian elephant. We've got the Bornean, quote-unquote, pygmy elephant. So let's have a look at you. So look at this beautiful guy here, and I love more elephants. Nice to see some nice detail there as well. Looks amazing. So the Bornean pygmy elephant, also just known as the pygmy elephant, or the just Bornean elephant. These guys are subspecies of the Indian elephant, Elephas maximus, that inhabit northeastern Borneo. And though the rest of the species, lives in Indonesia and Malaysia. The origin of the species has actually been quite subject to debate, which is interesting as well. And a definitive subspecies classification as Elephas maximus borneensis awaits a detailed morphometric and genetic study. But in 2024, they have listed it as the species, and has been listed as endangered by the IUCN, as their population has declined by at least 50% over the last 3 generations, about last 75 years. And they are threatened by habitat loss, degradation, and fragmentation of habitats. So that's the main reason they're kind of quite endangered. Don't get to that. And they do have a bit of a controversial origin. The Sultan of Sulun was thought to have introduced captive elephants into Borneo in the 18th century that were released into the jungle. Though looking at the DNA of the Borneo elephant suggests they most likely derived from Sudantic stock or mainland stock, and are indigenous to Borneo, and had been genetically distinct and are considered their own evolutionary significant unit. But we'll get a little bit more about that later. They've got a very interesting taxonomic history there. In terms of their kind of looks, they're not too different from a typical Asian elephant. They have become commonplace referred to as the pygmy elephant because they're really only slightly smaller, about like 30% smaller than modern mainland Indian elephants, but not too different there. Morphometric measurements kind of show that they're not too different in that regard, and they're relatively tame, which was another reason why they were thinking, oh, this is actually could be a captive population introduced to Borneo. Yeah, no, a really, really cool species. We'll have a look at the females when we get a chance there. But yeah, not too different in most regards and behaviour and everything to other Indian elephants. So they are confined to the north and northeastern parts of Borneo. In the 1980s, there were two distinct populations. One lived in Sabah and one in Kalimantan as well. But it's kind of shrunk over the last 100 years because of decreased access to suitable habitat, with the Borneo's soil tend to be young, leached and fertile. They actually speculate that the distribution of wild elephants may be limited by food resources, so they never really inhabit all of Borneo. They only really lived around the northern tip of Borneo. But their population has shrunk as well. In 19 1992, the estimated population size of Sabah was about 500 to 2,000 individuals, and it seemed to have shrunk since then, with the most recent population estimates probably thinking about 1,000 individuals or so. And in 2005, 5 female elephants were found in tracking divides and have a home range of about 250 to 400 kilometers in non-fragmented forests, but up to about 600 kilometers in fragmented forests. So that is a little bit sad. So in terms of threats, the preeminent threat for these guys is, like with most elephants, they are threatened by habitat loss, degradation, and fragmentation, which includes, encroaching on with humans and conflict with humans, which has become a big issue in India and Africa. One of the biggest animals that we have conflicts with, because elephants need so much space and they're so intelligent. Often they come into a lot of issues with humans. 100 elephants, hundreds of people, and sometimes even elephants are killed annually as a result of these conflicts, which is really sad. And expanding human developments block their migratory routes and deplete food sources and destroy their habitat. Also, another issue is the lack of trees due to logging, since they need also to drink about 100 to 225 litres of water a day. It's harder to find because the climate conditions are cutting their resources to water. And the only kind of way to get their water needs, they have to go and migrate to areas with water to survive. So that's another big issue there. But let's look at the male over there, because that's quite cool. Look at him, he's beautiful. He's a big, beautiful boy. So in terms of conservation, they are protected, and the genetic distinctiveness of the Bornean pygmy elephant has kind of led to them, being quite protected and thought to be an ESU, or an evolutionary significant unit. They are considered protected, and the Oregon Zoo has the only Bornean elephant in the US who was rescued from a palm oil plantation. And there was also a rescued Bornean elephant caught with tuberculosis, but she had luckily recovered from it as well. But in terms of their taxonomic history, it has not been resolved whether these are native to India, or they were not India, to Borneo, or they were introduced by the Sultan of Sulu in 1750 by the East India Company. Looking into the 19th century, they kind of established that these guys were found naturally in a restricted region of Borneo, and the status has been debated. And the debate was actually reopened in 2003, when there was a suggestion that the introduced Sulu elephants and the northeastern Bornean elephants may have descended from the now extinct Javan elephant, which was named Elephas maximus sornatus, which is interesting as well. And this hypothesis is based on missing archaeological evidence of long-term elephant habitation in Borneo, and in correlation with folklore. And elephants have not colonized the entire island of Borneo. But in 2003, they did a genetic study looking at the DNA, the mitochondrial DNA, and it shows that they are descended from pseudogenetic stock, but have undergone independent local evolution for some 300,000 years since a postulated Pleistocene colonization, and possibly became isolated from other Asian elephant populations when the land bridge that linked Borneo to the other Sunda Islands and the Asian mainland disappeared after the end of the last glacial maximum, about 18,000 or so years ago. And in terms of their history, though, they were considered appropriate gifts. Often the Raja of Java was given to elephants by the ruler Raja Baja of Sulu, and the animal reportedly the founders of the feral population in Borneo, which is in Borneo, but that's kind of considered not true now. So potentially the Borneo elephant, it's not completely settled, but it is leaning towards them being a natural population. But, they could be the largest introduced species, which is interesting as well. And there has been some debate there, but yeah, they seem to have most genetic evidence, and most of the evidence does suggest that they are a natural population there. But yeah, really, really beautiful, and I love how Frontier has done these elephants. They look rather amazing, look how muddy they are, and all the beautiful textures. But yeah, this makes me just want an African forest elephant a little bit more, since we've gotten a first DLC elephant, and they look rather cute, if I do say so myself. That's a really awesome pack. I really do love what everyone's kind of done with this pack. It is amazing. And I do love seeing these elephants. I do love elephants. They're probably my favourite animal. If you had a gun to my head, I'd say elephants. I've always loved elephants. Very charismatic animals. So yeah, we're going to come out of here and say that was an amazing pack. I really do love this pack. I think it would be cool to have maybe a Sumatran rhino or something like that, but I know Asia, we've been wanting animals like Nilgai and honey badgers and Blackbuck for a while, so it's cool that we finally got them in game. And yeah, it was a very good assortment of species. Though I think a Sumatran rhino would have been a good animal to have. And as I mentioned, as I've gone with the last two parts, this one kind of seemed a little bit haphazard with its taxonomy and kind of information, things like that. Because I kind of mentioned as well, the Malabar Rose is actually a name for the Indian species, but the game species uses the Jopan, which is actually also known as the Sri Lankan rose. So the Malabar Rose is the wrong name, so that kind of didn't help in that case. And then also with here, the Japanese raccoon dog, they use the mainland raccoon dog range as well in their map, which it shouldn't be. So some little changes like that, but then it would be perfect. And I like that they have given some animals some really unique things. We've got the Peter David's deer that has a water need, which other deers don't have, as it's semi-aquatic. And the Japanese raccoon dog can climb. I think that really adds some unique things as well. And it's nice to have another elephant, because I do love elephants. Though I'm holding out for the African forest elephant as a DLC animal. But also like to see, I think Sumatran rhino would have been a really great add for this pack, even the Javan rhino. So we can have, all our rhinos and elephants. That would be awesome. But yeah, I think that's about enough rambling for me. So yeah, really cool pack. You can buy it on Steam if you want to be a completionist and have all 200 plus Planet Zoo animals in your pack at the moment. So yeah, I think this is a great place to finish the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like and subscribe, always look at little bell icons to get notified about anything. So if you guys enjoyed this video, guys like and subscribe, and bye bye.